Naomi Pierce checked her reflection in the elevator mirror for the third time that morning, fingers tugging subtly at the collar of her blouse as if she could will the fabric to sit just a little higher. The faint bruise on the side of her neck was still visible. Stubborn despite layers of concealer and the careful way she'd styled her hair to fall over one shoulder, she exhaled slowly, irritation curling in her chest. Of all the careless moments to have an accident, it had to be last night at the gym when the resistance band had snapped back against her skin with a sharp sting she'd brushed off at the time. Now it felt like a personal betrayal. Of all the days for this to happen, it had to be a Monday. A Monday with back-to-back meetings with Zion Holt. The elevator doors slid open onto the 42nd floor of Holt Enterprises, and Naomi stepped out into the pristine reception area. Morning light poured through floor-to ceiling windows, casting clean geometric shadows across polished marble floors. The space always felt more like a modern cathedral than an office, quiet, powerful, intimidating. She had been Zion's executive assistant for 18 months, and still, every single morning felt like crossing into a world built on authority and expectation. She straightened her shoulders and reminded herself to breathe, establish the routine, stay professional. Don't think about the mark. Morning, Naomi. Janelle called from the reception desk, her voice warm and familiar. Mr. Holt is already in. He asked for you the moment you arrived. Naomi's stomach tightened. Zion was always early, but he rarely summoned her first thing unless something urgent had come up. She forced a small smile, dropped her bag at her desk, and grabbed her tablet before heading down the hallway toward his corner office. Through the glass walls, she could see him standing by the window. Phone pressed to his ear, his free hand shoved deep into the pocket of his tailored navy suit. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders. The rigid set of a man who carried the weight of an empire without complaint. She knocked lightly. Zion gestured for her to enter without turning around. His office was a study in restrained luxury dark wood furniture, supple leather chairs, abstract art that probably cost more than her annual salary. Naomi had been in this room hundreds of times, but today it felt different, smaller, more intimate, as if the walls had leaned in overnight. Zion ended his call abruptly and turned to face her, grey eyes sharp and assessing as they swept over her. His gaze lingered just for a fraction of a second on her neck before lifting to meet her eyes. "Good morning, Naomi," he said evenly. "We need to go over the Morrison proposal before the 10 o'clock meeting." "Of course," she replied, sliding into the chair across from his desk. "I've compiled all the revisions you requested." But Zion didn't sit down. Instead, he moved closer, stopping just a foot away from her. Naomi caught the scent of his colon-expensive woodsy, familiar in a way that made late nights at the office and quiet conference rooms blur together in her mind. "Your hair is different today," he observed, his voice carrying an edge she couldn't quite place. "I just pulled it to one side," Naomi said, instinctively touching the waves draped over her shoulder. "Did you want to start with the financial projections or the timeline? What happened to your neck?" The question cut cleanly through the air, sharp, direct. Naomi's hand flew to the bruise before she could stop herself. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "Just a minor accident. It doesn't look like nothing." His jaw tightened, something unfamiliar and intense flickering in his eyes. "What kind of accident leaves a mark like that?" "Mr. Holt, I really think we should focus on the Morrison proposal," she said, opening her tablet with fingers that weren't quite steady. "We only have 40 minutes before the meeting." "Answer the question, Naomi." He pulled his chair around the desk and sat directly in front of her, close enough that their knees nearly touched. Her breath caught. In 18 months of working together, Zion had never crossed this line. He was always professional, distant in a way that felt intentional, controlled, but now there was nothing distant about him as he leaned forward slightly, forcing her back against the chair. "I don't see how that's relevant to our work," she said. Though her voice betrayed her, "Humor me," his tone softened, but the command beneath it was unmistakable. "Did someone hurt you?" The concern in his voice startled her. "No, of course not. It was just a stupid accident at the gym." A resistance band snapped. She watched him closely as his shoulders eased, just a fraction. Relief, barely concealed. "You're sure?" he asked. "Because if someone put their hands on you, I need to know." Her heart began to race, not with fear, but with realization. Zion Holt, the man splashed across business magazines. The man who dated models and socialites, who could have anyone he wanted, was acting jealous. The thought felt impossible, and yet here he was. Studying her, like the answer to something he hadn't wanted to ask himself. "I'm sure," she said quietly. "I was just clumsy." He held her gaze for a long moment, before standing and returning to his side of the desk, restoring the space between them. But something had shifted. The walls he kept so carefully in place now showed cracks. "Good," he said, voice controlled once more. "That's good. Now about the Morrison proposal." They worked for the next half hour, but Naomi barely absorbed a word. She caught Zion's eyes drifting to her neck again and again, his jaw tightening every time he noticed the mark. When she stood to leave, he stopped her with a hand on her arm. The touch was brief, professional and electric. "Naomi," he said, something vulnerable flickering across his face. "If you ever need anything, if anyone ever makes you uncomfortably, come to me. Understand?" "I understand, Mr. Holt," she replied. "Thank you." She should have left it there. Should have walked away and held on to the boundaries they'd always respected. But something reckless stirred inside her, though she added lightly, "Your concern seems rather personal for an employer." His eyes darkened. "Maybe it is." The admission hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "I should prepare the conference room," she said, though she didn't move. "Naomi," he said softly, stepping closer again, "is there someone in your life? Someone who would leave marks on your skin?" She could have ended it. Could have said no and restored order. Instead, she tilted her head slightly and asked, "Would it matter if there was?" His jaw flexed. "It would matter to me." "Why?" she whispered. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed with a meeting reminder. The spell shattered. He stepped back, frustration etched into his expression. "The meeting," he said roughly. She nodded and headed for the door. Just before leaving, she glanced back. Zion stood behind his desk, watching her with an expression so openly longing it stole her breath. In that moment, Naomi made a decision. She wasn't going to explain the mark. Not yet. Let him wonder. Let him imagine. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt every time. She saw him smiling beside women who belonged so easily in his world. If Zion Holt wanted the truth, he would have to admit why it mattered. The game had begun, and for the first time since she'd started working for him. Naomi Pierce held all the cards. The week that followed felt nothing like the orderly, predictable rhythm Naomi Pierce had come to expect from her professional life. From the moment she stepped into the office each morning, she could feel it, the shift in the air, the undercurrent of tension that hadn't existed before. Zion Holt found reasons to call her into his office at least 6 times a day. Sometimes it was for documents that could have been emailed. Sometimes it was to clarify details she already knew by heart. And sometimes there was no real reason at all. Every time she entered his office, his eyes went to her neck first. Always the neck. Only after that did he look at her face. She noticed the way his jaw would tighten, how his shoulders stiffened as though he were bracing himself against something he refused to name. Naomi kept her composure, answered his questions, delivered updates with her usual calm efficiency. But inside, something warm and dangerous unfurled each time she caught him staring. During meetings, she felt his gaze on her across conference tables, sharp and assessing in a way that had nothing to do with business. When colleagues laughed at her comments, his hands would clench briefly, fingers curling against the polished surface of the table. When someone leaned too close to her while speaking, his posture changed instantly, back straighter, expression darker, attention snapping into focus like a drawn blade. On Wednesday morning, Ryan Cole started in the marketing department. He had an easy kind of confidence. The kind that didn't demand attention but naturally drew it anyway. Sandy brown hair, warm eyes that crinkled when he smiled, and a relaxed manner that made him instantly likable. Within hours of his arrival, he found his way to Naomi's desk, holding a folder he didn't really need. "So this is where the magic happens," Ryan said with a friendly grin, leaning casually against her desk. "Janelle told me you're the one who actually keeps this place running." Naomi smiled politely. "Janelle exaggerates. I just help keep Mr. Holt organized." "Still," Ryan said easily, "I'd love to pick your brain about the company culture here. Maybe over coffee sometime." His interest was straightforward and uncomplicated, the kind of attention that would have flattered her under normal circumstances. Naomi chose her response carefully. "Maybe lunch in the cafeteria," she said diplomatically. "I'm usually pretty busy with coffee breaks." From across the open office floor, she felt it before she saw it. When she glanced toward Zion's office, he was standing at the window, phone in hand but clearly not using it. His attention was fixed on them, his expression cold enough to freeze the sunlight pouring in around him. Ryan followed her gaze and straightened slightly. "Is Mr. Holt always so intense?" "That's just his working face," Naomi said lightly, though her heart had started to race. "You'll get used to it." Ryan chuckled and excused himself, leaving her alone with the lingering awareness of Zion's stare. Moments later, her phone buzzed with an internal message, "My office." Now, she didn't rush, but she didn't delay either. When she entered, Zion was pacing behind his desk like a caged animal, tension rolling off him in waves. "Who was that?" he demanded the moment the door closed. "Ryan Cole," Naomi replied evenly. "The new marketing hire." He had questions about office procedures. "Seemed very interested in those procedures," Zion said tightly. "Leaning on your desk. Making you smile." "He was being friendly," she said, crossing her arms. "That's what people do when they're new." She watched his reaction closely, felt a quiet surge of satisfaction at the jealousy he wasn't even trying to hide. "Is there actual work you needed to discuss?" she added. "Or did you call me in here to question my interactions with colleagues?" Zion stopped pacing and faced her fully. "You're enjoying this," he said slowly. "Watching me lose my mind over you." The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. It softened something in her chest. "Zion," she said quietly, "I don't know what you want from me. You're my boss. We've worked together for 18 months. You've never given me any indication that you saw me as anything other than your assistant, and now suddenly, you're acting like you have some claim on me." "I know I don't have a claim," he said, stepping closer. "I know I have no right to feel this way. But that doesn't change the fact that I do." His voice dropped, raw and unguarded. "Seeing that mark on your neck made me realize something I've been denying for months. I can't stand the thought of someone else touching you, kissing you, making you smile the way you do." Her breath caught. "What exactly have you been denying?" Before he could answer, the office door swung open. Vanessa Langston swept in without knocking, her presence commanding instant attention. She wore a crimson dress that hugged every curve, dark hair cascading in perfect waves, her smile polished and predatory all at once. "Zion, darling," she purred, completely ignoring Naomi. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." And just like that, the tension in the room shifted, reshaping itself into something sharper, more complicated, and far more dangerous. Zion barely had time to respond before Vanessa Langston crossed the room and brushed a kiss against each of his cheeks, the kind of affectionate gesture that was meant to be seen. Her hand lingered on his arm, manicured fingers resting there as if they belonged. "I was just in the neighborhood," she said smoothly, finally glancing at Naomi as though noticing her for the first time. "I thought we could discuss the merger over lunch. You know how much more productive business is when it's mixed with pleasure." Naomi felt something unpleasant twist in her chest. This was Zion's world. Polished women who moved through his space like they owned it. Women who touched him without hesitation, who fit so seamlessly at his side that no one would ever question their place there. "Actually, Vanessa, I have meetings all afternoon," Zion said, gently but firmly removing her hand from his arm. "Perhaps another time." "Oh, don't be boring," Vanessa laughed. "Surely your assistant can reschedule a few things." She turned fully toward Naomi then, her gaze dismissive, sharp. You can handle that, can't you, dear? Naomi straightened, lifting her chin. Mr. Holt's schedule is quite full today, she said evenly, but I can check next week's availability if you'd like to set up a proper appointment. Vanessa's smile sharpened. How efficient. You've trained her well, Zion. That's enough, Zion said, his voice carrying a warning edge. Naomi is my executive assistant, not a pet. I'd appreciate it if you showed her the respect she deserves. For a brief moment, genuine surprise flickered across Vanessa's face. Then she laughed lightly, the sound grating. Of course. My apologies. She air-kissed Zion's cheeks again. Don't work too hard, darling. When she finally left, the silence that followed felt heavy, charged. Naomi turned toward the door, suddenly desperate for distance. But Zion caught her wrist. Wait, he said. Don't leave like this. Like what? The hurt slipped into her voice, despite her best efforts. I have work to do, Mr. Holt. And apparently lunches to reschedule for your dates. I'm not having lunch with her, he said quickly. I'm not interested in Vanessa Langston. You don't owe me any explanations, Naomi replied, pulling her hand free. I'm just your assistant. Remember. His jaw tightened. That's not how I think of you. And you know it. She knew she was being unfair, knew she was reacting from a place of jealousy she hadn't wanted to acknowledge. But the image of Vanessa's hand on him had lodged itself somewhere painful. This isn't about professionalism, Zion said quietly. This is about the fact that watching Ryan Cole flirt with you made me want to fire him on the spot. It's about how I can't sleep because I keep wondering who might have put that mark on your neck. It's about how I've spent 18 months pretending. I don't notice everything about you and I can't pretend anymore. Her heart pounded. What are you saying? He took a breath, steadying himself. I'm saying, I'm falling for you, Naomi Pierce. Actually, I think I already have. I know it's complicated, inappropriate, probably a terrible idea, but I can't help it. The confession hung between them, fragile and terrifying. There's no one, Naomi said softly. The mark really was an accident. I let you think otherwise because I needed to know, if you cared. You saw me as more than just your assistant. Zion's eyes widened. So all week you've been torturing yourself over your own feelings, she said gently. She stepped closer. And for what it's worth, I've been falling to every time you remember how I take my coffee. Every time you defend me, every time you trust me. You are so much more than you think, he said fiercely, cupping her face. You're everything. She barely had time to inhale before his lips met hers. The kiss was tentative at first, reverent, as though he were afraid she might vanish. Then she melted into him, her hands sliding into his hair. And the kiss deepened slow, overwhelming. Right. When they finally parted, foreheads touching. Both of them breathless, Zion whispered, I've wanted to do that for so long. Me too, Naomi admitted. But even as they stood there, wrapped in something new and fragile, both of them knew the line they had crossed would change everything. The reality of what they had done didn't crash down on Naomi immediately. It crept in slowly, slipping between breaths and heartbeats as the seconds passed after that kiss. She was still standing close to Zion, still aware of the warmth of his hands on her face, the steady thrum of his pulse beneath her palms. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The office felt too small now, charged with something that hadn't existed before and couldn't be undone. We need to talk about this, Naomi said finally, her voice quiet but steady. About what it means. I know, Zion replied, his tone serious as he searched her face. Company policy. Power dynamics. What people will say. I've already started thinking through all of it. That's what scares me, she admitted. This isn't just a feeling. It's consequences. Before he could answer, there was a knock at the door. Both of them froze, instinctively stepping apart, professionalism snapping back into place like armor. Mr. Holt. Janelle's voice came through the door. You have a reminder for the executive briefing in 10 minutes. Thank you, Zion said evenly. We'll be right there. When the door closed again, he looked back at Naomi. his expression softer now, more restrained. "We'll take this one step at a time," he said. "I promise." She nodded, even though uncertainty still churned inside her. "We should go." They walked out of the office separately, falling back into their familiar roles with practiced ease. But nothing felt familiar anymore. During the meeting, Naomi focused on her notes, her tablet, anything but the memory of Zion's lips on hers. Every now and then, she caught his gaze across the table. Each time, it lingered a fraction longer than it should have. By lunchtime, the weight of it all had settled heavily in her chest. She was just returning to her desk when Ryan Cole appeared again, holding 2 cups of coffee this time. "Peace offering," he said, offering one with a tentative smile. "I think I came on a little strong earlier. Let's start over as friends and colleagues." Relief washed through her. "That sounds perfect," Naomi said sincerely. "Thank you for understanding." "Still," Ryan added lightly, studying her face, "you seem different today, in a good way." Before she could respond, the elevator doors opened. Zion stepped out, his eyes finding her instantly. For the briefest moment, the mask slipped. Desire, possessiveness, and something deeper flashed across his face before he smoothed his expression back into professional calm. "Good afternoon, Naomi Ryan," he said with a nod. "Naomi, I need to see you in my office when you have a moment." "Of course. Mr. Holt," she replied. As soon as the office door closed behind her, Zion crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a hunger that made her knees weaken. "I missed you," he murmured against her lips. "Is that insane?" "It's been 40 minutes, she said breathlessly. "Completely insane." They laughed softly, the sound intimate and dangerous. Another knock shattered the moment. Janelle peeked in, eyes wide. "Mr. Holt, Vanessa Langston is here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she insists you'll want to see her." Zion's jaw tightened. "Tell her I'm busy." "I tried," Janelle said apologetically. "She's very persistent." Naomi took a step back, straightening her blouse. "It's fine. I'll go." Before she could leave, Zion caught her hand in full view of the glass walls and anyone passing by. He lifted her fingers to his lips and pressed a slow kiss to her knuckles. "Tonight," he said quietly, "dinner, at my place, 7. Her cheeks warmed as she nodded. "Okay." Janelle's eyes went wide, and Naomi knew the damage was done. By lunchtime, the whispers had started. She felt them everywhere, curious glances, hushed conversations that stopped when she approached, looks that ranged from envy to outright hostility. She kept her head down and focused on her work, but it was harder than she'd expected. That afternoon, Vanessa cornered her in the women's restroom. "So the rumors are true," Vanessa said casually, reapplying lipstick in the mirror. "You've managed to land Zion Holt. Impressive." "I'm not trying to land anyone," Naomi replied evenly, washing her hands. "And whatever is happening is private." "Private?" Vanessa laughed softly. "Nothing is private when you're involved with someone like him. You'll be judged, compared, photographed. Are you ready for that?" Naomi met her gaze in the mirror. "I can take care of myself." Vanessa turned fully toward her. "Zion and I grew up together. Our families vacationed together. We understand each other's world. What exactly do you have to offer him?" The words cut deeper than Naomi wanted to admit. She dried her hands slowly. "If you'll excuse me, I have work to do." She walked out with as much composure as she could manage, but doubt echoed in her mind long after she returned to her desk. What did she have to offer someone like Zion Holt? That evening, she nearly cancelled dinner. She stood outside his building, phone in hand, typing and deleting messages. But then she remembered the way he looked at her open vulnerable. Real. She went upstairs. Zion answered the door, in jeans and a sweater, looking younger and more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "You came," he said, relief unmistakable in his voice. "I almost didn't," Naomi admitted. "Vanessa found me today." His expression darkened as she told him everything. When she finished, he pulled her into his arms. "She doesn't know what she's talking about," he said fiercely. "With you, I get to be real." You see me? That's everything. Tears stung Naomi's eyes as he held her close. I want this, she said softly. Even if it's complicated. Zion smiled, slow and certain. Good, because I'm not letting you go. They stayed wrapped in each other for a long moment, the city humming faintly beyond the windows while everything inside Zion's apartment felt still. Naomi rested her forehead against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, letting the warmth of his arms ground her. The doubts hadn't vanished, but they had softened, pushed back by the certainty in his voice and the way he held her, as if she mattered, as if this wasn't temporary or reckless, but real. The office is talking, Naomi said quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. People are saying things. That I slept my way into job security. That you're having some kind of crisis? That I'm using you. Zion's hold tightened just slightly. Do you care what they think? I care about you, she answered honestly. About your reputation. About everything you've built. I don't want to be the scandal that damages it. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his expression serious and intent. You could never be a scandal to me. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years. He cupped her face gently, his thumbs brushing away the tension she hadn't realized was etched there. I talked to HR and legal today, he continued. Technically, there's no policy against us dating as long as we disclose the relationship, and I'm not directly responsible for your performance reviews or salary decisions. We can do this the right way, Naomi, transparently, professionally. She searched his eyes, looking for hesitation, for doubt. She found none. When people whisper, he went on, voice steady, when clients question your role, when Vanessa or anyone else tries to make you feel like you don't belong in my world, we prove them wrong together. Emotion swelled in her chest, sharp and overwhelming. You make it sound so simple. It won't be, he admitted. There will be challenges. Hard days. But I'm willing to face all of it if you are. He paused, giving her space. Choice. The question is, do you want this? Do you want me? Knowing it won't be easy. Naomi thought of the long nights she'd spent watching him from across conference rooms. The way her stomach fluttered every time he smiled at her. The fear she'd carried, convinced she would never belong in his world. And then she thought of the way he listened to her, trusted her, saw her. I want you, she said simply. All of it. Even the complicated parts. Zion's smile was slow and brilliant, lighting something deep in his eyes. Good, he said softly. Because I'm not letting you go. Not for office gossip. Not for Vanessa Langston. Not for anyone. He kissed her then sure, and grounding hand Naomi felt the last of her hesitation dissolve. Whatever came next, they would face it side by side, and for the first time since that mark had appeared on her neck, she felt something stronger than uncertainty. She felt chosen. Naomi woke slowly, drifting up from sleep with a faint awareness of warmth at her back and a steady, familiar weight around her waist. Zion's arm was draped possessively over her, his breathing slow and even against the nape of her neck. For a moment, she stayed perfectly still, afraid that moving would break whatever fragile magic held them there together. They had talked until nearly 3 in the morning. About work, about boundaries, about how careful they would have to be. Promises of honesty and communication had flowed easily between them, spoken in the dark with quiet seriousness. And then, at some point, words had stopped altogether. Now, in the pale morning light filtering through the bedroom windows, reality crept in. She had slept with her boss. She had crossed every professional line. She had spent her adult life carefully maintaining every rule she had sworn she would never bend. And the most unsettling part was this. She didn't regret a single second of it. I can hear you thinking, Zion murmured sleepily against her shoulder, lips brushing her skin. What's going on in that brilliant mind of yours? Naomi smiled faintly and turned to face him. His hair was disheveled, his expression soft with sleep, the sharp edge he wore in the office completely absent. She had to resist the urge to kiss him senseless all over again. I'm just wondering how we're supposed to do this, she admitted. At work, how we act. What we tell people. Zion propped himself up on one elbow, his face serious now. Eventually, we tell the truth, he said. But first, I need to talk to HR and legal. Make sure everything is handled properly. I won't let this affect your career, Naomi. If anyone has a problem with us, they can take it up with me. That's exactly what I'm worried about, she said quietly. People will think I slept my way into every opportunity. They'll question every decision you make where I'm concerned. Then we prove them wrong, he replied calmly, tracing her jaw with his thumb. Your work speaks for itself. You're the best assistant I've ever had, and that has nothing to do with how I feel about you personally. They got ready reluctantly. Zion lent her one of his shirts, the fabric warm and faintly scented like him. Walking into the office separately felt wrong, like a lie. But they both knew it was necessary at least, for now. Naomi arrived first, settling into her routine with practiced ease. Everything looked the same. Her desk, her calendar, her inbox. And yet nothing felt normal anymore. Every memory of the night before colored her thoughts. From Zion's whispered confessions to the way he had held her as if she were precious, Ryan Cole appeared at her desk just after 9. Holding 2 cups of coffee. Peace offering, he said with an easy smile. I think I came on a little strong earlier this week. Let's reset, friends and colleagues. That sounds perfect, Naomi replied sincerely. Thank you for understanding. He studied her for a moment, head tilting slightly. You seem different today. In a good way. Before she could respond, the elevator doors opened. Zion stepped out, his eyes finding her instantly. For a split second, his professional mask slipped. Desire, possessiveness, something deeper and far more dangerous flashed across his face. Then it was gone. Good morning. Naomi, Ryan, he said evenly, nodding at both of them. Naomi, I need to see you in my office when you have a moment. Of course, Mr. Holt, she replied smoothly. After Ryan left, Naomi gathered her tablet and walked toward Zion's office, her pulse quickening with every step. The moment the door closed behind her, Zion crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a hunger that suggested the few hours apart had been far too long. I missed you, he murmured against her lips. Is that insane? It's been 40 minutes, she whispered back. Completely insane. They barely had time to laugh before a knock at the door sent them springing apart. Janelle peeked in, apologetic. Mr. Holt, Vanessa Langston is here. She says she doesn't have an appointment, but insists you'll want to see her. Zion's jaw tightened. Tell her, I'm busy. I tried, Janelle said softly. She's very persistent. It's fine, Naomi said quietly, already stepping back. I'll go. We can talk later. As she turned to leave, Zion caught her hand in full view of Janelle and anyone who might pass by the glass walls of his office. He lifted her fingers and pressed a deliberate kiss to her knuckles. Tonight, he said calmly. Dinner, at my place. 7. Naomi nodded, her cheeks warming despite herself. Janelle's eyes widened, and Naomi knew that by lunchtime, the entire office would know something had changed by noon. The whispers had begun. Naomi felt them before she heard them, the subtle shifts in conversation when she passed by. The way voices lowered, laughter paused, eyes followed. The office, once a place she moved through with quiet confidence, now felt like a stage where every step was being watched and judged. She kept her head down, focused on her work, reminding herself that competence had always been her shield. Still, it was harder than she'd expected. Some looks were curious, tinged with fascination. Others were openly envious. A few carried a sharpness that made her shoulders tense. Naomi ignored them all, answering emails, coordinating schedules, grounding herself in routine. She refused to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her falter. That afternoon, she slipped into the women's restroom for a moment of quiet and found Vanessa Langston already there. So, Vanessa said lightly, touching up her lipstick in the mirror, the rumors are true. Naomi met her reflection calmly. Rumors have a way of growing on their own. Vanessa smiled, slow and knowing. You've managed to snare Zion Holt. Impressive, really. I didn't think he went for the wholesome girl-next-door type. I'm not trying to snare anyone, Naomi replied evenly as she washed her hands. And whatever is or isn't happening between Mr. Holt and me is private. Private. Vanessa laughed softly. Darling, nothing is private when you're involved with someone like Zion. You'll be photographed, scrutinized, compared to every woman he's ever dated. Society pages. Charity events. Business dinners where everyone decides whether you belong. The words struck closer than Naomi wanted to admit. She dried her hands slowly. I can take care of myself. Vanessa turned fully toward her, expression sharpening. Zion and I have known each other since we were children. Our families vacationed together. We understand each other's world. What exactly do you have to offer him besides being available and convenient? Anger flared, hot and sharp, but Naomi kept her voice steady. If you'll excuse me, I have work to do. She left the restroom with as much composure as she could manage, but Vanessa's words followed her down the hallway, echoing in her thoughts. What did she have to offer someone like Zion Holt? She was smart, capable, good at her job, but there were thousands of smart, capable women in the city. Women who came from his world, who knew its rules instinctively. Doubt settled heavy in her chest. That evening, Naomi almost cancelled dinner. She stood outside Zion's building for nearly 10 minutes. Phone in hand, typing and deleting messages she couldn't quite send. Anxiety twisted through her, fueled by office gossip and Vanessa's voice in her head. But then she remembered the way Zion looked at her when he thought no one was watching. The vulnerability in his voice when he admitted his feelings. The gentleness of his touch. With him, he wasn't the untouchable CEO. He was just a man who listened, who laughed with her, who made her feel seen. She went upstairs. Zion answered the door, in jeans and a casual sweater, looking younger and more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Relief crossed his face the moment he saw her. You came, he said softly. I was worried you might change your mind. I almost did, Naomi admitted as she stepped inside. Vanessa found me today. His expression darkened instantly. What did she say to you? Naomi told him everything, watching his jaw tighten with each word. When she finished, he pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her with fierce certainty. Listen to me, he said. Vanessa Langston doesn't know anything about what we have. Yes, she's part of my past. Yes, our families know each other. But every minute I spent in that world felt like I was playing a role. He held her a little tighter. With you, I get to be real. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You call me out when I need it. You see, me not the CEO, not the name, not the legacy. Me. Tears pricked Naomi's eyes. The office is talking, she whispered. They're saying, I slept my way into security. That you're using me? That I'm using you. You care what they think. He asked gently. I care about your reputation, she said. I don't want to be the scandal that hurts everything you've built. You could never be that, Zion said firmly. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years. He cupped her face, his gaze unwavering. I talked to HR and legal today. There's no policy against us as long as we disclose the relationship, and I'm not directly responsible for your reviews or salary. We can do this right. When people whisper, he continued, when clients question us, when Vanessa, or anyone else, tries to make you feel like you don't belong, I'll stand with you. Every time. Naomi searched his face, seeing only certainty there. I won't pretend it'll be easy, he said, but I'm willing to face all of it if you are. She took a steady breath. I am. Zion smiled, slow and sure. Good, he kissed her then, deep and grounding. And for the first time that day, Naomi felt her doubts loosen their grip. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. Over the following weeks, Naomi and Zion began the careful work of building something real in the open. What had started as a secret charged with tension slowly transformed into a deliberate partnership, one that demanded patience, resilience, and an unshakable trust in each other. Zion officially disclosed their relationship to human resources, just as he'd promised. The process was thorough, clinical, and humbling in its own way. Naomi was reassigned to a different supervisor for performance reviews, ensuring there could be no suggestion of favoritism. On paper, everything was handled cleanly and correctly. In practice, it changed nothing about how hard she worked, or how closely she watched her own behavior. Some colleagues surprised her with quiet support. A few offered warm smiles or casual encouragement in the break room. Others were less subtle, their resentment simmering just beneath polite professionalism. Naomi absorbed it all without complaint. Determined to let her work speak louder than rumor ever could, Ryan Cole became an unexpected ally. One afternoon, as they were finishing up a project review, he leaned back in his chair and smiled knowingly. "I had a feeling something was brewing between you two," he admitted. "The way he looked at you that first day we were never even in the same league." Naomi laughed softly. "You're a good friend, Ryan." "I try," he said. "And for what it's worth, I think you're good for him." Zion, for his part, never wavered. In meetings, his respect for Naomi's insights was unmistakable. He listened when she spoke, credited her ideas openly, trusted her judgment in ways that left no room for doubt. When Vanessa Langston finally attempted to undermine Naomi during a high-level business meeting, Zion shut it down without hesitation. "Naomi Pierce is not only my partner," he said calmly. "She is also one of the most capable professionals on this team. Her insights are valued and trusted." The public support meant more to Naomi than any private declaration ever could. 3 months after that first kiss in his office, Zion invited Naomi to attend a charity gala with him. It would be her first major public appearance at his side, and the thought of it made her stomach twist with nerves. The night of the event, she nearly backed out, until Zion took her hands and looked at her with quiet certainty. "You belong with me," he said simply. When they walked into the ballroom together, his hand warm and steady at the small of her back, Naomi felt something shift inside her. Cameras flashed, conversations paused, eyes turned toward them. But instead of shrinking, she stood taller. She didn't need to be from his world to stand beside him. She just needed to be herself. "You look stunning," Zion whispered as they paused for photographs. "And you're mine? I'm the luckiest man in this room." Emotion swelled in her chest, surprising her with its intensity. "I love you," Naomi said softly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. For a heartbeat, panic flickered through her, but it vanished when Zion smiled, a smile bright enough to light the entire room. "I love you too," he said. "I have for a while now. I was just waiting for the right moment." She laughed, breathless, in front of 300 people and a dozen cameras. "Why not?" he replied easily. "Let everyone know." As they danced beneath the glittering chandeliers surrounded by the very society that had once made her doubt herself, Naomi realized something profound. She had found where she belonged. Not in the ballroom, not in the headlines, but in Zion's arms, in his heart, in the life they were choosing to build together. Life didn't magically become simple after the gala. If anything, it became more visible. The attention followed them everywhere inside the office, at industry events, even online. Naomi saw her name appear in whispers on professional forums and gossip blogs that usually tracked Zion's business deals. Not his personal life. Some comments were supportive. Others were cruel, dismissive, eager to reduce her to a footnote in someone else's success story. She refused to let it define her. Naomi arrived early, stayed late when necessary, and delivered work that was meticulous and undeniable. She spoke carefully in meetings, backed every recommendation with data, and let her results answer the questions no one dared ask aloud. Slowly, subtly, the narrative began to shift. It was harder to dismiss her when projects succeeded under her guidance, when executives requested her input directly, when her competence became impossible to ignore. Zion noticed everything. He never hovered, never shielded her in ways that would undermine her independence. Instead, he supported her the way he supported any trusted leader, by listening, by valuing her perspective, by making space for her voice. In public, His affection was measured but unmistakable. A hand at the small of her back. A glance held a second longer than necessary. Quiet signals that said she was chosen, not hidden. Ryan continued to be a steady presence, running interference when the office atmosphere grew tense. "You know," he said one afternoon, handing Naomi a file, "I've never seen Zion trust anyone the way he trusts you. That counts for more than gossip ever will." Vanessa Langston tried one last time to test the boundaries. During a quarterly strategy meeting packed with senior leadership, she questioned one of Naomi's projections with thinly veiled condescension. The room went quiet, tension thickening the air. Before Naomi could respond, Zion spoke. "Naomi's analysis is sound," he said calmly. "I reviewed it myself. If you have concerns, bring data. Otherwise, we'll move forward as planned." The finality in his tone left no room for debate. After that, Vanessa's presence faded. The message was clear not just to her, but to everyone watching. Naomi wasn't a liability. She was a partner, professionally and personally. Outside the office, their relationship settled into something steady and deeply rooted. They cooked together on quiet weeknights, argued playfully over music, fell asleep tangled up in laughter and late-night conversations. Zion wasn't the untouchable CEO when they were alone. He was thoughtful, attentive, and unexpectedly soft in ways that made Naomi feel safe. One evening, as they sat on his balcony overlooking the city, Naomi leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you ever regret this?" she asked softly. "Us." Zion didn't hesitate. "Not for a second," he said. "I regret how long it took me to admit what I felt. But choosing you? Never," she smiled, heart full. They weren't perfect. They had disagreements, days when the pressure felt heavy and the scrutiny exhausting. But they faced it together. Grounded in something stronger than rumor or reputation, they had chosen each other. And that choice, made openly, deliberately, was beginning to speak louder than anything else ever could. The mark on Naomi's neck had faded weeks ago, leaving behind smooth skin and nothing else to hint at the accident that had started everything. And yet, its impact lingered, woven into the fabric of her life in ways she never could have anticipated. Standing beside Zion now, she sometimes thought back to that morning in the elevator, to the careless snap of a resistance band and the frustration she'd felt staring at her reflection. She couldn't have known then that such a small, inconvenient thing would become the catalyst for something so profound. That night at the gala had changed everything. Dancing beneath the glittering chandelier, surrounded by a world that once felt intimidating and closed off, Naomi had realized she no longer felt out of place. Not because she had learned to navigate Zion's world flawlessly, but because she no longer felt the need to prove that she belonged there at all. She belonged with him. Zion spun her gently across the dance floor, his hand warm and steady in hers, his other resting securely at her waist. He leaned close, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered promises meant only for her plans, for trips they would take, quiet mornings they would share, a future built deliberately and together. Naomi smiled, her heart full. The noise of the room faded until there was only him, only the certainty that had settled deep in her chest. "I'm in love with Naomi Pierce," Zion had said earlier that evening, his voice carrying without hesitation, "and I don't care who knows it." Now, as they swayed to the music, she believed him completely. She didn't need to be from his world. She didn't need to transform herself into something more polished, more acceptable, more expected. She just needed to be herself, the woman who challenged him, who made him laugh, who saw the man beneath the title and chose him anyway. Outside the ballroom, the business world continued to spin. Deadlines waited. Rumors came and went. Expectations shifted and reformed. But inside Zion's arms, Naomi felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a very long time. She felt safe. She felt chosen. She felt home. As the night drew to a close, Zion rested his forehead against hers, smiling softly. "Sometimes the best things in life start with accidents," he murmured. Naomi laughed quietly, thinking of that snapped band, that fleeting bruise. "Sometimes," she agreed. They had their truth now. They had each other, and that was more than enough. It was everything.